Jaishankar, Mr. Guterres, Mr. 19th Darbari, friends and colleagues. I welcome each one of you, each and every one of you, to this, the 19th Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture. This memorial lecture is organized by TERI every year in the memory of its founder, Mr. Darbari Seth. In this, the centenary year of his birth, he was born on the 21st of August, 1921. We pledge ourselves to his central belief in the efficient use of resources and in self-sufficiency. We mark again our commitment to continue to innovate to find sustainable solutions in our development journey. I'm extremely grateful to Dr. Jaishankar, the Union Minister for External Affairs, to chair this event and to deliver the presidential address. Thank you very much, sir. We are also indebted to Dr. António Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, for agreeing to deliver the Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture. Given the restrictions on travel, the security concerns, the issue of time differences, we will be playing a recorded message of his speech. We are right now in the middle of a challenging and trying year. This year has upended the established ways of working and in dealing with each other. This is true of TERI, of other NGOs, and of corporates as well. And indeed, we need to ensure that we find new ways to work together, new business models, and indeed, as this event signifies, we need new ways to be able to communicate each other both comfortably and confidently. The economic recovery packages that the government of India has announced have very rightly focused on the urgent need to accelerate economic growth, job creation, and sustainable livelihoods. They have provided credit guarantees and credit for investments, especially in the target sectors of agriculture and SMEs. I think it is important for all of us to work together so that we can create, on the one hand, the economic growth, jobs, and sustainable livelihoods that are needed, and on the other hand, to make sure that these investments promote green options as well. As we move ahead, we look at a range of options, whether it is biomass resource options or whether it is energy efficiency in SMEs. In all of these areas, we have the opportunity to put together packages that help people have better lives. I think that is at the heart of the economic recovery. As we look to the future, we are reinvigorated by the enthusiasm, skills, and path-making directions forged by our colleagues. And I would like to recognize those colleagues in TERI who during 2019-2020 completed 20 years of service in this organization, as well as those who have been recognized for their innovative work last year and through the addition of their names to the TERI Roll of Honor. We now begin with colleagues who have completed 20 years of service in TERI. Dr. Sunil Pandey, Mr. Prahlad Kumar Tiwari, Ms. Subhashri Vijay Raghavan, and Ms. Kiran Shivpuri. And now for the TERI Roll of Honor for the year 2019-2020. Mr. A. Rajashekharan Nair, Mr. Ramesh Chandra Bhatroji, Ms. Nazia Nahid Hussain, Ms. Shweta Singh, Mr. Prasoon Singh, Mr. Ritesh Kumar Jha, Mr. Neshwin Nigel Rodriguez, Mr. Balaji Vaparthi, Mr. Tarun Sharma, Mr. K. M. Girish, Dr. Vidya Batra, Ms. Saroj Nair,
Ms. Kiran Shivpuri, Dr. Aparna Tyagi, Mr. Will Hall, Mr. Varun Prakash Pandey, Ms. Garima Vats, Mr. Manish Bhaskar Asodekar, Ms. S. Shrikala, Mr. Kapil Mutineni, Mr. Nitin Bajpayee, Ms. Rashmi Murali, Dr. Braj Raj Singh, Mr. Akash Deep, Ms. Megha Beher, Mr. Sharif Kamar. Thank you.
And I again thank each and every one of you for your participation, albeit online, in these challenging and trying times. And I thank you for your participation. Moving ahead, I request our chairman, Mr. Nitin Desai, to add his words of welcome and share his thoughts with us.
Thank you. Mr. Jaishankar, Mr. Guterres, Dr. Mathur, Ambassador Puri, and friends. It's a pleasure for me to be here at this event on the Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture. Darbari Seth is a person of great importance for us because he established TERI around the time of the first oil shock and helped to sustain it and develop it as a major think tank. I'm very happy that we've also had heard about the role of honor in TERI. And the reason, because TERI is much more than just a think tank. It is certainly an organization which does analysis and policy, but it is also an organization which does hard technological research. It has worked on things like biomass gasification. It has worked on a zapper, oil zapper, which takes care of all of the oil spills that happen. It has worked on wastewater management, on how to do get hydrogen out of agricultural materials and so on. Basically, it's much more than just a think tank. It's also an organization which delivers in terms of hard technology. So I'm very happy that we're also honoring people from the staff of TERI today. Mr. Darbari Seth was, of course, a person of great importance for us. And it's really very good that we are today to honor him. We have two very eminent people, the Secretary General of the UN, Mr. António Guterres, and the Foreign Minister of India, Mr. Jaishankar, who will tell us much more on how they see the challenges before. Mr. Guterres is, of course, well known. He was a person who was the Prime Minister of Portugal. He was involved with the Socialist International, later the High Commissioner for Refugees, and has been the Secretary General of the UN since 2017. And while he's been Secretary General, he has taken a strong role in trying to push the climate change agenda. He ran a climate action summit last year, I think, last year. And he continues to be a person who's, like a global community leader who's pushing for more urgent action on challenges of climate change. I'm very happy that he's going to be talking to us today on the whole issue of renewable energy. The whole issue of climate change inspires me to inject a little note here. About a long time ago, 1988, the first meeting, international meetings on climate change was held in Canada. And it was chaired by Stephen Lewis, who's still around. And at that time, since I'd just come out of the Brundtland Commission, they asked me to be part of it. And Stephen Lewis asked me, he says, look, this is not just on climate change, it's on climate change and its impact on security. Can I suggest and invite somebody who's an eminent person in security analysis for this meeting? And I turned around to the most eminent person of that time, which was KG Subramaniam. And KG immediately agreed, and the two of us went to this first major international meeting on climate change held in 1988 in Canada. So I'm very particularly happy today to welcome KG's son, Dr. Jaishankar, who's going to talk to us about his vision of multilateralism. We all know Dr. Jaishankar well. He's our foreign minister, but before that he was foreign secretary and has held ambassadorial positions in China and the USA, and has given a great deal of thought to the challenges of multilateralism, and this is what he is going to talk to us about. So I look forward to his presidential address and subsequently the Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture by the Secretary General of the UN, Mr. António Guterres. I'm sure the two of them will give us a great deal of inspiration and guidance on how we need to work ahead in pushing the agenda of sustainable development in the years ahead. Thank you very much. I now invite
yes, can we request Dr. Jaishankar to deliver the presidential address?
Thank you. Dr. Nitin Desai, Chairman of TERI, Dr. Ajay Mathur, Director General of TERI, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. These are unusual times, but we are meeting here to honor a very unusual person. So let me begin by saying what a great privilege it is to be invited to preside over a landmark event in TERI's annual calendar, the 19th Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture. The Ministry of External Affairs, of course, has a strong partnership with TERI. We work very closely together in key domains of public policy. And I'm particularly gratified, actually, to join you all on an occasion that recognizes Darbari Seth, who can really accurately be described as among the builders of modern India. It is also only appropriate that a lecture in his honor is being delivered by none other than Mr. António Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations. Now, someone of my generation will readily recall Darbari Seth as a leading figure of what is the most prominent Indian business group, one closely associated with the growth of our national industrial capacities. Now, much of the story has actually been captured in a book. Many of you may be familiar with it, which is very appropriately called The Salt of the Earth. Obviously, such a rich and productive career that spanned over half a century can hardly be summarized in a few words. But if one looks back at Darbari Seth's celebrated achievements in Tata Chemicals, there are many learnings that are relevant today. For decades, he oversaw the creation of a sector that directly influenced the needs of the rural economy and also met the demands of the general consumer. And while doing so, he was extremely conscious of the larger societal context. Indeed, it was actually the energy and the environment aspect of that interest that propelled him to establish TERI in 1974. And today, as we revisit the intersection of policy making, entrepreneurship, and social good in our quest for economic revival, Darbari Seth is an obvious inspiration. But there are other, perhaps even more important lessons that we can draw from his life and times. Among the early challenges that he successfully overcame was a drought in 1962 that threatened to shut down the Mithapur township where Tata Chemicals was located. His innovative water conservation and substitution techniques actually established a reputation that only grew with time. A decade and a half later, a combination of ecological concerns, industrial efficiency, and actually a preventive healthcare campaign on goiter helped to give birth to Tata Salt there. Darbari Seth is rightly credited with leading a science-driven Indian manufacturing company of scale and repute. But his life is much more than that. It is one of community achievement, of national service, and of global ambition. And he achieved that by harmonizing entrepreneurship and innovation with environment and social good. Now, this interplay of the local, the national, and the global, which permeates his life, that remains very much at the center of many public policy challenges today. In fact, getting the balance right among them is perhaps the big debate of our times. Let's start with the importance of the local. Whether it is a problem or a resource, a situation or a culture, much of reality is actually local, or certainly should be. That ability to remain rooted to the ground is actually more than physical, it is a mindset. It can arise from instinct, be developed through education, and finally be validated by experience. Applying to more than business or technology, it transcends the material domain, and immersion in the local is actually identity and culture as well. I stress this at a moment in the world where there are serious conversations underway on globalization. Any objective assessment of that phenomenon would highlight that the world has been ill-served by a one-size-fits-all approach. Whether it is condescending prescriptions from afar or mass produce that overwhelms local creativity, they infringe the very diversity that defines us all. Today, we see a growing recognition of the value and importance of the local. It may be in handlooms and handicrafts, in arts and cuisine, or in livelihood and commerce. Being vocal for local is in fact a message that has a resonance much bigger than most of us imagine. And it is truly only local thinking that will strive to ensure that the benefits of governance and development reach the very last person. Now, while local may be the ground reality, the nation remains the building block of the contemporary world. Among them, India is exceptional as one of the civilizational societies that has spanned the ages. Although tested by empires, ideology, and faith, the nation has proved an extraordinarily durable concept. It is today our most dominant identity, and we accordingly assess our collective prospects in that light. To advance those, the focus is increasingly on our ability to improve human development indices and enhance comprehensive national power. Achieving this agenda effectively is best done through the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the obvious pathway. And the national campaigns that we have undertaken recently, whether it is Jan Dhan Yojana or Jal Jeevan Mission, Ayushman Bharat or Beti Padhao Beti Bachao, Swachh Bharat Mission or Skill India, Digital India or Startup India, they're all aimed to do just that. Now, strengthening our skill sets and creating a better enabling environment are obviously the basis for a larger national capacity. And that is precisely what is the goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign. We need to be more self-generating and self-sustaining, drawing on greater national confidence and stronger societal commitment. Like the rest of the world, India too has been severely tested by the COVID-19 pandemic. But there is confidence in our ability to transform the challenge into opportunity. A large part of that would rest on policies that give primacy to employment generation, innovation, and digitization. As the Prime Minister underlined on 15th August, we not only seek to make in India, but to do so making for the world. Indeed, if India is to make a difference at the global level, it can only be through scaling up its own capacities. While our domestic policies need to be promotional of rapid growth and greater manufacturing, our external ones too must ensure in parallel a level playing field for our own producers. In approaching the world, it is obviously important to emphasize that India remains global in its outlook, even more so now after the pandemic. This has been demonstrated repeatedly, whether it is in our medical assistance to 150 nations or humanitarian relief to those societies in distress. The most recent example was a consignment we sent to Beirut. The current times, however, do provide an occasion to review the nature and terms of our external engagement. Economically, arrangements based on the template of others have naturally not worked in our favor. Thinking through the challenges we face on the basis of our own interests is therefore very much the essence of Atmanirbharta. Livelihood and innovation should never be sacrificed at the altar of political fashion or commercial convenience. Believe me, our country has enough cards to play if we have the confidence to play them well. Well, all that will inevitably unfold. The time is also ripe for us to revisit the very concept of globalization. We have allowed it to be defined by the interests of a few who visualize that process largely in financial, trade, or travel terms. Real globalization can never be just an aggregate of transaction in these domains. It is an outcome of genuine collaboration and essential indivisibility. The true challenges are more phenomena like terrorism, pandemics, and climate change. These are the issues that will really test the seriousness of multilateralism. Unfortunately, there are some who persuade themselves that they can draw the benefits while leaving the risks, threats, and challenges for others to deal with. This is predicated upon a false confidence that such problems can be localized in some regions, while others stay free from such contagion. As we have seen, this is not possible. If it took a heinous attack using a passenger aircraft as weapons of mass destruction to underscore the age of terror, it has similarly taken a lethally contagious virus to trigger a pandemic that has brought the world economy to its knees. Future historians will mark these as standout moments that disrupted the trajectory of human society. At the same time, there is also another similarity that we should reflect on. Terrorism was not born on 9/11, nor has the COVID been the only pandemic. We have long known intellectually that terrorism is a cancer that potentially affects everyone, just as pandemics potentially impact all humanity. And yet, in both cases, globalized focused response to either challenge have tended to emerge only when there has been sufficient disruption created by a spectacular event. 19 years from the tragedy of 9/11 and 12 years from our own 26/11, we have today a range of mechanisms in place to contend with terrorism. These include the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, various UN sanctions committees, and the Counter-Terrorism Executive Directorate. But we still lack a comprehensive convention on international terrorism, with the membership of the UN still wrestling with certain foundational principles. All the while, states that have turned the production of terrorists into a primary export have attempted, by the dint of bland denials, to paint themselves also as victims of terror. But as we have seen last week, sustained pressure through international mechanisms to prevent the movement of funds for terror groups and the front agencies can work. It has eventually compelled a state complicit in aiding, abetting, training, and directing terror groups and associated criminal syndicates to grudgingly acknowledge the presence of wanted terrorists and organized crime leaders on its territory. The struggle against terror and those who aid and abet it is work in progress. It remains for the international system to create the necessary mechanisms to shut down the structures that support and enable terrorism, whether in South Asia or across the globe. Similarly, we face a structural challenge in improving the international architecture that serves all humanity in the fight against pandemics. We have seen precursors of this current crisis before. For most of the last century, humankind's luck largely held out. Either the sites of such outbreaks were remote, or our monitoring systems managed to head off a crisis in time. This time, however, the international warning systems, reporting protocols, and response mechanisms were unable to prevent the spread beyond ground zero. These examples have highlighted the need for both a more enlightened, more responsive multilateral system and a new, inclusive, and non-transactional approach to multilateralism. In short, reformed multilateralism. The reform of international organizations is not merely desirable, it is imperative. We need to modernize the international system step by step to make it fit for purpose, beginning by making each entity relevant to the age in which we live, not when it was created. This requires revisiting membership and structures of control, reorienting operational principles and rules, and rebuilding the resourcing channels of the key pillars of multilateralism. When we look at the world's approach to climate change, the narrative has evolved significantly since the 1990s. At COP21 in Paris in 2015, Prime Minister Modi stressed India's enhanced commitment in that regard. Subsequently, India demonstrated its will through its intended nationally determined contributions, INDCs, emerging as a leader in green energy transitions. We have set an ambitious goal of achieving a 40% level reliance on non-fossil fuel power by 2030. In the near term, we are to reach 175 gigawatts of installed capacity in renewable power by 2022. This is a target we are close to achieving. We have also launched the world's largest program to make LED lighting affordable, with over 360 million LED bulbs distributed, saving 47 billion kilowatt hours of electric power per year, and reducing 38 million tons of CO2. Urban transportation solutions are being implemented to expand mass transport in major urban centers, with an ambitious program of bringing in electric vehicles and raising the bar on vehicle emission norms. And India's forest cover continues to increase, standing today at 24.3%, in addition to which we are also committed to restoring 26 million hectares of degraded land by 2030. Now, air and land apart, we are implementing an equally ambitious plan to enhance access to clean water, ensuring piped water supplied for every rural household by 2024, improving water use efficiency, and increasing conservation of water to maximize the per capita availability of water. These examples of local action will inevitably have global relevance. If a nation of over 1 billion people can achieve growth and development through sustainable means, it will help us collectively create favorable outcomes in an inclusive, non-transactional global process. At another level, if India can create cost-effective and appropriate technological solutions, these can also be rapidly deployed, both at scale and at low cost, in other countries that face similar challenges. It is in this spirit of local action for global outcomes that India and France work together to create the International Solar Alliance, which has become a treaty-based organization that is open to all members of the United Nations. So far, some 67 countries have ratified the ISA Framework Agreement as of date. Through the ISA and other bilateral development partnerships, India is already working to enhance capacity in our neighborhood, in Africa, Asia, Latin America, to deploy green technologies in support of development. A similar approach underpins our Prime Minister's initiative tabled at the last UNGA to create a Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI. Here too, we seek to script a cooperative approach to build resilience in infrastructure, transport, communication buildings across the globe, especially in geographies susceptible to natural disasters. The objective is to find best-in-class solutions that are readily deployable, scalable, and affordable, so that the consequences and costs of managing natural and other disasters are mitigated substantially. Let me stress that these examples show that commitment to a fairer and more inclusive multilateral goal need not obstruct a pragmatic course of action. Our initiatives in the complex and often contested discourse on climate change serve as a contrast to the unwillingness to take more practical, less ideological action to combat terrorism. Greater practicality and more non-selectivity would certainly strengthen multilateralism, especially as we enter a more multipolar world. On its part, India has sought to prioritize and achieve concrete outcomes in different domains through practical cooperation. This is as evident in the attainment of the SDGs as in efforts to develop diagnostic, therapeutic, and vaccine solutions. For all the challenges that the current pandemic has brought to our doorstep, it has also refocused us on the international system that has coexisted for as long as we have been a free nation. It is, in that sense, a unique moment for serious reflection on the state of the world order to which we have all become accustomed. India enters the UN Security Council as an elected member in 2021 and joins the troika of the G20 at almost the same time. There could be no better opportunity to work with all those who recognize the benefits of multilateralism and are prepared to contribute more to its reform. An India that is weighing the balance between economic revival and global engagement would do well to recall Mahatma Gandhi's words: humankind is as much self-dependent as interdependent. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jaishankar. I think the linking of the vocal for local with the global is, I think, one of the stepping stones of our own engagements, and even in areas where engagement doesn't occur or occurs rather sparsely, as you pointed out. We thank you for the presidential address. We, I think, will have to mull over all the ideas that you have put out and will be interacting with you on many of these. May I now request that we play the recorded address of the UN Secretary General delivering the Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture.
Excellencies, dear friends, I'm honored to deliver the 19th Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture. Darbari Seth was a climate action pioneer. He stressed that India must end its reliance on polluting, financially volatile and costly fossil fuels and instead invest in clean, economically resilient solar power. Today, as we endure the twin crises of COVID-19 and climate change, this effort has never been more important. Worldwide, the pandemic has exposed systemic fragilities and inequalities that threaten the basis of sustainable development. A rapidly heating world threatens even more disruption and exposes even further our world's deep and damaging imbalances. Today's young climate activists understand this. They understand climate justice. They know that the countries most affected by climate change have done the least to contribute to it. As we look to recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, we must commit to doing better. That means transforming our economic, energy and health systems to save lives, create stable, inclusive economies, and stave off the existential threat of climate change. I want to talk to you today about how to bring that vision to life and about India's role in that vital effort. Dear friends, India has all the ingredients for exerting the leadership at home and abroad envisioned by Darbari Seth. The drivers are poverty alleviation and universal energy access, two of India's top priorities. Scaling up clean energy, particularly solar, is the recipe for solving both. Investments in renewable energy, clean transport and energy efficiency during the recovery from the pandemic could extend electricity access to 270 million people worldwide, fully a third of the people that currently lack it. These same investments could help create 9 million jobs annually over the next 3 years. Investments in renewable energy generate 3 times more jobs than investments in polluting fossil fuels. With the COVID-19 pandemic threatening to push many people back into poverty, such job creation is an opportunity that can't be missed. India is already pushing ahead in this direction. Since 2015, the number of people working in renewable energy in India has increased 5-fold. Last year, the country's spending on solar energy surpassed spending on coal-fired power generation for the first time. India has also made significant progress towards universal access to electricity. Yet, despite an access rate of 95%, 64 million Indians are still without access today. There is still work to do and opportunities to be grasped. Dear friends, clean energy and closing the energy access gap are good business. They are the ticket to growth and prosperity. Yet, here in India, subsidies for fossil fuels are still some 7 times more than subsidies for clean energy. Continued support for fossil fuels in so many places around the world is deeply troubling. I've asked all G20 countries, including India, to invest in a clean green transition as they recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. This means ending fossil fuel subsidies, placing a price on carbon pollution, and committing to no new coal power plants after 2020. In their domestic stimulus and investment plans in response to COVID-19, countries such as the Republic of Korea, the United Kingdom, or Germany, as well as the European Union, are speeding up the decarbonization of their economies. They are shifting from unsustainable fossil fuels to clean and efficient renewables and investing in energy storage solutions such as green hydrogen. And it is not just developed economies stepping up. Many in the developing world are leading by example. Countries such as Nigeria, which has recently reformed its fossil fuel subsidy framework. While I'm encouraged by these positive signals, I'm also increasingly concerned about several negative trends. Recent research on G20 recovery packages shows that twice as much recovery money has been spent on fossil fuels as clean energy. In some cases, we are seeing countries doubling down on domestic coal and opening up coal auctions. This strategy will only lead to further economic contraction and damaging health consequences. We have never had more evidence that pollution from fossil fuels, including coal emissions, severely damages human health and leads to much higher healthcare system costs. Outdoor air pollution, largely driven by high-emitting energy and transport sources, leads to damaging pulmonary diseases, asthma, pneumonia, and lung cancer. This year, researchers in the United States concluded that people living in regions with high levels of air pollution are more likely to die from COVID-19. If fossil fuel emissions were eliminated, overall life expectancy could rise by more than 20 months, avoiding 5.5 million deaths per year worldwide. Investing in fossil fuels means more deaths and illness and rising healthcare costs. It is, simply put, a human disaster and bad economics. Not least because the cost of renewables has fallen so much that it is already cheaper to build new renewable energy capacity than to continue operating 39% of the world's existing coal capacity. This share of uncompetitive coal plants will rapidly increase to 60% in 2022. In India, 50% of coal will be uncompetitive in 2022, reaching 85% by 2025. This is why the world's largest investors are increasingly abandoning coal. They see the writing on the wall. It spells stranded assets and makes no commercial sense. The coal business is going up in smoke. Dear friends, the advantages of India's renewable energy resources are plain to see. They are low cost, protected from volatile commodities markets, and offer 3 times the job potential of fossil fuel power plants. And they can improve air quality at a time when our cities are literally choking. With its vast size and ecological diversity, India is already experiencing many of the world's impacts of climate change. Floods and droughts are getting more frequent and severe, causing major damage to food systems, local economies, and human health. India's recent floods have upended the lives of millions of people. Climate change hits the most vulnerable hardest, undermining the remarkable progress of economies like India in bringing millions out of poverty. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change special report on the 1.5-degree goal of the Paris Agreement reveals that if this temperature limit is breached, India will face the brunt of the climate crisis. The country will endure more intensive heat waves, floods and droughts, increased water stress, and reduced food production, all undermining progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Our challenge is urgent and clear. To limit temperature increase to 1.5 degrees, global emissions need to be halved by 2030, and the world will need to be carbon neutral before 2050. These goals are still achievable. But today, the world is at a crucial juncture. As governments mobilize trillions of dollars to recover from COVID-19 pandemic, their decisions will have climate consequences for decades. These choices can either propel climate action forward or set us back years, which science says we cannot afford. This is why I have urged governments to take 6 climate-positive actions to recover better from the pandemic. Invest in green jobs, do not bail out polluting industries, end fossil fuel subsidies, take climate risks into account in all financial and policy decisions, work together, and most important, leave no one behind. Like all countries, India is at a crossroad. And yet, despite the significant challenges the country faces in bringing shared prosperity to its population, it has in many ways embraced clean technology and a sustainable energy future. I applaud India's decision to take forward the International Solar Alliance in the form of one sun, one world, one grid. And I commend India's plans for a World Solar Bank that will mobilize $1 trillion of investments in solar projects over the coming decade. India itself now has 37 gigawatts of installed solar electricity, and this is only the beginning. I'm inspired by the Indian government's decision to raise its target of renewable energy capacity from the initial 2015 goal of 175 gigawatts to 500 gigawatts by 2030. I have no doubt this decision will attract more and more international investors, such as the sovereign wealth funds and pension funds, like the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec or the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. India is a pioneer when it comes to driving innovation for access to electricity and on clean cooking. I call on India and all its innovators, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to spearhead the global search for a solution to solar cooking at the household level. India can be the business hub to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 7. At the Climate Action Summit last year, India, together with Sweden, launched the Leadership Group for Industry Transition. This partnership of key public and private sector stakeholders is committed to achieving net zero emissions by mid-century in sectors that collectively account for 30% of global emissions. Companies such as Dalmia Cement and Mahindra are driving innovation, but we need many more to join them. India can become a true global superpower in the fight against climate change if it speeds up its shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. I was inspired to learn that during the pandemic, India's proportion of renewable energy rose from 17% to 24%, while coal-fired power declined from 76% to 66%. This promising trend needs to continue. Renewable energy needs to grow, and coal use must be progressively phased out. That must be our story. A story of smarter, stronger, cleaner economies for the 21st century, creating more jobs, more justice, and more prosperity. It is a story that entrepreneurs and innovators are already telling in India and around the world. I will continue to urge all countries, especially the G20 countries, to commit to carbon neutrality before 2050 and to submit, well before COP26, more ambitious nationally determined contributions and long-term strategies that are aligned with the 1.5-degree goal. I call on Indian leaders to take the decisions, make the investments, and adopt the policies necessary to continue this vital journey. Today is a time for bold leadership on clean energy and climate action. I call on India to be at the helm of the ambitious leadership we need. Both the pandemic and the climate crisis have raised fundamental questions about how to ensure the health and well-being of the world's people and about how nations must cooperate to advance the common good. Young people, in particular, are looking to all of us to uphold intergenerational solidarity and take bold steps towards sustainability, equality, and social justice. At this pivotal moment, as the United Nations marks its 75th anniversary, India has a crucial role to play. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guterres. I think the call for increased renewable energy is well made. And I think as we move into the future, we are looking at possibility of round-the-clock renewable energy being competitive. And that would, by itself, unleash a series of forces which I hope would not only cover India, but the globe. And finally, to end, may I request my colleague, Dr. Alok Adolia, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Before I extend my formal vote of thanks, it was refreshing to hear about the urgency to move away from coal from the Secretary General just 3 years ago, delivering the 16th Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture. The then Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, Dr. Arvind Subramanian, had brought out the higher social cost of electricity from renewables as compared to the social cost of electricity from coal. In these 3 years, we have seen large change happen. Solar electricity is now the cheapest form of electricity in India during the daytime when it is produced. However, coal electricity continues to be the cheapest form of the electricity at night. In the current situation, with rising demand and with the bulk of consumers being limited in their ability to pay for electricity, both renewables and coal make economic sense. In the near future, I would think that their growth will coexist in India, at least till the cost of round-the-clock renewable electricity becomes cheaper than that of coal electricity. Colleagues from TERI, our guests from all over the world, and dear friends, all of you might have agreed that the enriching time we have all spent here together over the past 1 hour, and now it is indeed my privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all the dignitaries and participants who have made it convenient to attend this 19th Darbari Seth Memorial Lecture organized by TERI in the memory of accomplished leader and a unique individual whose vision and drive earned him the title of the man with the Midas touch, Mr. Darbari Seth, and this is his birth centenary year as well. Today's event has been a fitting tribute to this stalwart who had a genuine concern for the poor and vulnerable and an abiding commitment to the welfare of the people and establishment of an egalitarian society. We are deeply grateful to the respected Shri S. Jaishankar ji, Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Government of India, for presiding over this function and for his enlightening address. His address was unique, as always, due to the inbuilt novelty of ideas as well as style. Sir, I thank you for presiding over this function and for your valuable presence. I take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to most respected Mr. António Guterres, Secretary General, United Nations, for gracing this occasion as the chief guest. His presence today in this function has immensely enhanced its importance. His speech was not only valuable for TERI, but for the whole world. We are extremely grateful to you for your insightful address. We have identified few areas from your address, and I firmly believe not only TERI, but many institutions represented in today's event will take this path with more enthusiasm and commitment to serve global communities by the knowledge and areas currently pursued and expected to be pursued in the future. I express my gratefulness for the presence of Shri Nitin Desai ji, the Chairman TERI, for his leadership and encouragement. He has provided many ideas and opportunities for TERI, and we need his continued support and encouragement in years to come. Dr. Ajay Mathur, DG TERI, has been the driving force behind this whole process, and his dynamism sets example for each TERIer. My sincere thanks for his efforts constant guidance, motivation, and emphasis on detailed planning for setting up new agendas for TERI. He has provided many valuable suggestions for this event as well, and we thank you, Dr. Mathur, for all this. I also express my sincere thanks to the family of Sri Darbari Seth, media fraternity, and other esteemed guests worldwide who have made and taken keen interest in the program and have taken time out of their busy schedule to attend this event. Lastly, my thanks are due to our IT team as well as program cell who have worked with great dedication to make this program a success. You all might agree that COVID-19 posed many challenges to the world in many ways. However, it allowed us to connect even more efficiently and effortlessly to every corner of the world. The overall coordination of the program by Dr. Annapurna Vancheshwaran is also duly acknowledged. See you next year and hopefully in person. Many thanks and be safe.
Thank you.